Hi, and welcome to Phoenix Concussion Recovery Podcast. My name is Nick Mercer of Concussion Talk Podcast. Right now, I'm on the phone with Lauren Ziaks of Phoenix Concussion Recovery, and she will talk to you about returning to school and work and the accommodations you may need.
Hello, thanks for having me again. I want to talk about accommodations because they're vital to decreasing depression and anxiety and feelings of isolation in the concussed population. Studies have shown that getting people back into school is vital for their mental health. Just getting those kids in the building is what's most important early on. We want to be able to limit the stress and that overwhelming feeling that the kids have. You don't want them to feel like I can't miss all this work because my grades are going to fail or I'm never going to get into college. You got to get them to see the short game and realize that if they can just control their environment, they're going to do better overall. One of the big pieces before we actually talk about the accommodations is that if your school isn't following them, we always recommend, number one, a parent steps up and gets involved, communicates with the teachers, with the counselors, that sort of thing. And then number two, we want the student to be their own advocate, especially as the student gets to be a teenager. It's really important for them to be their own best advocate. I tell them, don't be rude to your teachers, don't make a scene in the class, but make sure you stick up for yourself, or you talk to your counselor afterwards and you make sure that you're getting the accommodations that have been written by your doctor. We recommend the early accommodations to expedite recovery. So there's been enough research now to prove that we should be avoiding the time-consuming 504, which is a more permanent accommodation. Most of these kids are going to get better in less than a month. So if we just do early, easy recommendations in their recovery, they generally don't need permanent accommodations. It should go without saying, there should be no sport until you're 100% in school, okay? So at no time should be returning to practice, or should you be participating in a game if you are not having to do all your homework in the classroom. Sometimes we're able to let the students watch their games or their practices. This can help them stay involved, feel part of the team, not feel isolated, but this is a case-by-case basis, and it depends on the severity of their symptoms. So I want to start briefly with accommodations for work, because that's important too. And then we're going to talk about school, and then we'll talk about long-term accommodations for later on or for going to college. So for work, what we recommend is 5 to 15-minute breaks every hour. We want you to get up, walk around. Don't go immediately on your phone. That's not a break from your computer screen, right? You want to be looking at a distance, giving your eyes a break. If we can, we like to recommend a 4 to 6 hour workday in the beginning, or even just a few days a week. But again, this all depends on your financial situation and how accommodating your work environment is. If you work at a computer, mostly in an office, we like people to wear earbuds or sunglasses or blue light filters to help decrease the stimulation going to their body, and it helps you use as much of your energy as you can for work. If you can take a few good days off, if you have some vacation days or some sick days that you can use, early on if you miss a few days, you actually do a lot better and you actually miss less work in the long run. So if you can shut it down for a couple days, that's actually the very best thing that you can do. If your injury is severe, then we have the whole process of talking to your doctor and finding out what your rights are through the Disabilities Act and through filing for disability, short-term or long-term. So there's actually a lot of options out there for you. Sometimes patients actually have to change their work environment, but then we're not really talking about accommodations anymore. We're talking about life changes. So that's not really relevant for this podcast. All right, so now we're going to get into school. Obviously, we want to take the first couple of days off when it's more severe. So that's talking about that 24 to 48 hours of rest, cognitive rest, no screens, no phones, no TV, yada, yada, yada. We're not exercising significantly. We're just shutting it all down. Then you get back in the building. And we still are hearing from doctors, I don't want your kid back at school until they're headache free. But all the research is showing that that's isolating these kids. It's causing more depression and anxiety. So instead, we can accommodate their environment in the classroom. We want to eliminate all homework and testing and just get them in the building. If it's more severe, we always recommend earbuds, or sometimes the kids are self-conscious about earplugs in the classroom. So we tell them to talk to their teacher about putting earbuds, like headphones in, and then they just don't play any music and they're not being rude, but they seem to feel like it looks a little bit better in the classroom. We also recommend sunglasses if they're really light sensitive, and then we'll talk about blue light filters in a little bit. We also recommend that they have the option to put their head down or walk out of the classroom and sit in the hallway as needed. Sometimes they can make it through a whole class if they get a 5-minute break. So again, it's more important that they're in the classroom, but they're being successful and we're limiting symptoms. We'll recommend that kids avoid the hallways so they either get to leave 5 minutes early or 5 minutes late, and then they're not in that busy rush in between the classes. Lunch is often a hectic and crazy and unsupervised environment for you guys, for all teenagers. So we usually recommend that they have lunch in the nurse's office or a counselor. A lot of schools don't have a nurse anymore. Sometimes they have to go to the library, but you get the point. A quiet place where they're not being disrupted to their environment. They can listen to calm music. They're not in that hectic environment of the lunchroom. Often we'll ask if they can have one or two friends with them. Again, that's decreasing that social isolation. They don't feel like they're being ostracized from everybody else. We'll start people with half days at school, eliminating PE and recess. Kids often have the hardest time with their STEM classes or classes that are computer heavy, math, reading, that sort of thing. So we'll do half days. We try to give them a class that they like as well. Especially with the younger kids, the more and more they feel like they're being punished, the worse things seem to get. So those half days, limiting the heavy computer work courses. Books on tape for English. Most public libraries now have access to the majority of your books for free on tape. So not having to actually physically read, but still getting the information into their brains in a more calming manner. Paper-based classwork. So all the schools around us are completely on the computer. They don't have any options to not be on the computer. Now, the papers exist in the world somewhere, right? There are paper-based options, or there's a printer attached to your computer. So we just recommend that they print out the worksheets and we give it to the kids that way to limit their time on the computer. So we're at half days, we're at no homework and no testing, limited computer work. If they have to be on the computer, it's in 20-minute increments. And then we're making it so that the classroom environment itself is tolerable by decreasing lights and noise. As we start to get feeling better, as we start to be able to tolerate more, we start to progress them to full days, still avoiding PE and recess, and still we can even be avoiding the lunchroom. And then we start to go to full days without breaks. You're able to increase the homework as they tolerate it. So we don't recommend more than 30 minutes of homework. It has to be all essential, only homework. And we generally will start them with 30 minutes of homework when they're on the far end of a half day. So if it's taking you more than 2 weeks to get back to school, we start to add in a little bit of work at home so that the kids don't start to feel like it's a get out of jail free card. They're not starting to, I still have a headache. I simply can't go to a full day of school. So you have to really talk to the kids, talk to the teachers, figure out what's going on. And then once they're in a full day, we can start to add back in testing. So that brings us to makeup work, because this can be really stressful, especially as the kids are getting into high school or the more type A personalities where they've missed all this stuff and what are they going to do? Their whole life is going to end because they're never going to make it all up. Depending on the amount of work, if it's been weeks worth of work, we actually recommend that they get to make it up over a break from school or over summer vacation. Sometimes the teachers just say like, you've been cleared for school. Let me just give you everything you've missed for the last 2 months and get it to me in a week. That doesn't work. It makes the kids really anxious. So instead, we recommend that you give them some time, a reasonable amount of time. You get rid of all non-essential work. That term is often up for debate depending on the school system. Sometimes they think everything is essential, but we all know if there's 15 of the same math problems, you could probably get by with just 5 of them, right? And so then we'll talk about blue light filters, because this is appropriate for work, school, permanent life. It's good for all of us to limit blue light. We recommend early on just an inexpensive blue light filter from a place like Amazon. The ones that I've been told by the teenagers are the least ugly of all the ones I recommend are the iKepper brand. I don't care. They don't pay me anything. I tell them, type in iKepper. It's one word, EYEKEPPER, and put in computer lenses. And then you know how Amazon works. It'll take you down a black hole of all different kinds of related products. So you can buy anything you want. Sometimes the kids won't wear glasses, so we recommend a screen filter. They are a lot more expensive, and if it's a school computer, you may or may not be able to put an adhesive product on the computer screen. I've been told by a patient that there's the possibility of downloading an app for your computer. I didn't know you could put an app on your computer, but they were able to do it. So there is out there in the universe a blue light filter you can actually download to your computer that takes over your computer screen. I do own a website, but couldn't explain that to you for the life of me. But if you are a tech person, God bless you, go do your thing. Anytime a kid is on a phone or an iPad, then there should also be a blue light filter on that. But it's much easier to apply blue light filters to iPads and iPhones. And you can go ahead and check that out on our concussion recovery, PhoenixConcussionRecovery.com. In our accommodations section of our website, we talk about all of this, and we also talk about blue light filters. And then, if you're still with us, the final piece of accommodations are for college. So a big piece is getting these kids into long-term life plans. And not everyone's going to go to college, so that's fine. You can go back to the work accommodations section of this podcast. But if you are planning to go on to college, you actually have a lot of options to help make yourself successful. almost every university, I would assume every university, has got a disability resource center of some sort. I actually worked at the Disability Resource Center when I was at Northeastern, so I have a little bit of firsthand knowledge. I'm sure it's very different now than it was 10 years ago, but thus it's still there. So we can do easy accommodations like testing in a quiet location. So you actually could go down to the Disability Resource Center and take your test in a quiet classroom so that the other students aren't there. Another easy one to get is extending test time. So if everybody gets the class period time of 60 minutes, they can very easily set it up so that you get 90 minutes or 2 hours, so that you eliminate that stress component that can decrease your scores. You can also have your test read to you. That one is a little bit more challenging to get approved, but once you have your doctor's writing notes and you fill out the forms that your resource center requires, you'll find that it's actually very accommodating. So they can actually read you the questions. You don't have to read them yourself. You can tape your lectures. You can have audiobooks for your different coursework. And then one of the really cool things that you can actually have is called a smart pen. Now, these are pretty expensive, so it'll depend on whether or not your university can provide it, or you can get a grant, or maybe you can afford it, and that's great if you can. But a smart pen will actually record the notes that you're writing. So you write them as if you're writing on a piece of paper, and the smart pen actually puts them into the computer and types them out for you. And
Nice.
A lot of times you can record the lecture as you go. So you can actually press record, take your notes as the teacher is speaking, and the computer program will put all of it in together for you, which is, I don't think that's for everybody. I don't think everybody needs that. But I think if you really want to go to college and you're struggling and you don't think you can do it, I think a smart pen is something that technology has created for us in this environment that can make you extremely successful. And then you can also set up assigned front seats. That doesn't have to be a permanent, something through the resource center. You probably could just go to your teacher and say, hey, can I get a front seat every time we have a class, that kind of thing. So It could be a really significant, expensive accommodation, or it could be something as simple as being allowed to wear earplugs during your tests. But there's options for you. You shouldn't have to feel limited based on any of your life circumstances after your concussion, whether it's short-term or long-term. There's always an option out there. You can go ahead and follow us on Twitter at LZ Concussion, or you can look for us at Phoenix Concussion. I didn't change my Twitter handle, so that's why it's still LZ Concussion. And then we're also on Facebook, Phoenix Concussion Recovery. And of course, we have our Return to Life and Sport exercise progression at phoenixconcussionrecovery.com. But we also have all that free education. And so, again, if any of this was confusing to you or you want to review it later, you can go over to our accommodations section of our website, and we've got charts and we've got things that you can print out and bring to your classroom. I'm going to put up a little post about these college accommodations because I've actually been lacking in not putting that up on the website. But it'll all be up there for you. And then just get out there, learn, and assimilate back into society.
Nice. Great. Thanks, Lauren. And be sure everyone to check out the website, PhoenixConcussionRecovery.com, or Phoenix Concussion Recovery, or PhoenixConcussion.com.
PhoenixConcussionRecovery.com.
PhoenixConcussionRecovery.com. So be sure to check that out. And as Lauren said, on Twitter and on Facebook. So please check that out. And we're on SoundCloud and iTunes and YouTube. So again, please continue to listen to this podcast. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Lauren.
Thanks. Thank you.
The music at the beginning of this podcast is by Ben Sound. www.bensound.com.